Victoria Wood came out of the north of England at a time when British comedy was still the bailiwick of the Oxbridge wit. With a keen sense of the absurd, she finds nothing more absurd than being interviewed. Eventually this little programme will be seen through the magic of the net all over the world, and there's a line of yours that might take some explaining. And the line is in one of your shows, and a newsreader says, "We'd like to apologise to our viewers in the north. It must be awful for you." Now, how would you explain that line to, say, someone from Ecuador?
Well, that to the people in the south, the people in the north are an inferior race, and that it's a very London-centric world, England.
Yeah, well, the good gag rather depends on a real, it's not a prejudice. Well, I suppose it was.
It is a prejudice.
You felt it as a prejudice.
Oh, I definitely used to feel
You were
it,
a chippy northerner in that way.
I was chippy, yeah. Yeah. The people used to imitate my accent. It used to really annoy me.
Were you funny when you were a kid in the house? Did you do
I could pull faces. I wasn't very outgoing, but I could pull faces. And I knew that would be my passport to freedom. Yeah.
Why were you ingoing?
Well, I was the youngest of four. I had two very, very outgoing sisters that were just above me in age, and I just sort of sank back with it. Also, I was addicted to sugar, which makes me depressed, and I was brought up on sugar, and so I think I was always slightly depressed as a child and a teenager.
I was outgoing because I was an only child who got everything he wanted, and given the chance to do it again, I'd have a few things.
Yeah.
You have to fight and impress and argue with and so on.
Well, you back off. I mean, there's no ideal way to be brought up. I was brought up in one room with a television and piano and a sandwich, and I lived like that. I just lived on my own. My parents were in other rooms. My father and mother didn't watch television at all.
You were pretty shy when I first knew you.
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
I am too, but I cover it up with this other thing because nobody believes you.
Well, nobody believes you're a stand-up comedian, that you can be shy, but stand-up comedy is the ideal place for a shy person because you're completely in control.
I used to go up the north because I was invited up there to try out as the heavy judge in a new programme called New Faces. Right. I was the first heavy judge in the pilot. I bring this up, of course, because as we explained to the viewer, New Faces is one of the places where you started off.
A talent show.
Yeah. Talent show. Yeah. And the heavy judge was the guy who spoke his mind and was cruel and so on. This has now become a standard showbiz cliche throughout the world.
Yes, yeah. But then it was a big...
It was a big new thing, yeah. And I was actually very good at it. And I was reducing people to tears, and then I realised that really wasn't the point of life, so I didn't do the show. If I'd done the show, I might have had a part in discovering you, because you came on New Faces and conquered.
I conquered the first round, and I got as far as the end of the year, and they put all the winners together in a terrible, terrible sketch show that it actually turned out to be a vehicle for somebody else, and so it was just a way of giving her practice on television, and the rest of us were just sort of patsies who were around doing sketches around her. But to me it was my big break, and I got £125 a week. I couldn't believe my luck, because before that I'd only got £11 a week on the dole.
Well, you had a flying start, because the first show that I saw in the pilot, when I was the heavy judge, the first contestant on was a guy who sang Mule Train very loudly while hitting himself on the head with a tin tray.
Yes, I remember him really well, yeah.
And then he blew up a rubber hot water bottle until it burst.
That's show business. Wish I could do that. I wouldn't have the right place.
He's probably still out there. You saw him just go
I remember him singing very well, yeah.
Yeah, because he used to be in the pubs.
Those were the days.
Yeah, those
people like that. They were versatile. Don't get on the telly.
They were versatile in those days. Yeah, sing, tin tray, hot water bottle. But I can give myself credit as a critic that I spotted you and Julie Walters and Emma Thompson. Mind you, you're all pretty hard to miss. There was a terrific amount of talent involved, but there was this system going where, before your generation, there weren't very many women who were writing their own stuff.
No.
And that was a new development. But there was one predecessor, wasn't there? Joyce Grenfell used to do.
Yes, she did.
Yeah, were you an admirer?
Yeah, I saw her when I was about 6 in the theatre. I remember her really, really well, because it struck me so strongly that you could have a woman on stage on her own and that was nobody else around her. Yeah. And that really stuck with me. And the other person I saw was Libby Morris, who was the only other person I knew who, and I heard that expression, a woman show, which I'd never heard before, and that lodged in my mind.
Yeah. Joyce Grenfell actually She actually had a piano player, didn't you? William Blazard.
That's right. Yes, yes. He used to play the piano upside down, didn't
Yeah,
he?
he
With
did
his
that.
hand backwards.
White Tail. That was his novelty,
Yes,
actually.
yeah.
And she was very regal, wasn't she? She'd come out and do the regal thing.
Yes, I remember her coming out and saying, "You can decide if my dress is leaf green or lettuce green," and that was her first line.
But in fact, she had a tremendous social range, didn't she? She was a great noticer of ordinary people as well as the aristocrats.
Yes.
She was an Astor.
Yes, she was an Astor, yes.
Yeah, but
Nancy
she
Astor's niece,
she wasn't
wasn't
doing shows about country houses because nobody would have come. They wouldn't have come.
No.
But she was pretty good at noticing the usherettes and all that sort of stuff.
Yes, yes.
Did that sort of give you a tip that...
It just lodged in my head that was a job, that you could do that as a job, because nobody had ever said to me that you could do that as a job. And people used to say to me, well, you'll have to work in advertising. That'll be what you're good at, because you're good at English. That's what people used to say, you're good at English. Wasn't good at anything else, really. But I did have a feeling inside that I could do something that wasn't just writing.
You started off in the north. How did you have to learn a new vocabulary for the south?
No. I've always done what I do, and people either get it or they don't get it. But it is English. I do English. Yeah. And if you love words, then, you have to use the words that you know.
You have an ace, and the ace is, of course, you can actually play that piano and compose.
Yes. Music. Yeah. I was obsessed with the piano. My father could play. He wrote the notes on the piano with pencil, and he wrote the notes under the tune of Polly Wolly Doodle, and he said, that's F and that's F, and I worked it out. And then I couldn't stop playing. I loved playing. And then they sent me for piano lessons, and I was so shy, my hands would sweat. I couldn't play the piano. My hands would slither off the keys, so I stopped going. And I was so ashamed that I'd stopped going. I thought it was naughty to play the piano. So I only played it when my parents were out. So when they went out, I'd go straight to the piano and play.
Well, it confirms the thesis that if you really want to do something, you'll find a way very early. I always thought I could be a terrific dancer, but if I was going to be a terrific dancer, I would have danced when I was young. I would have found a way. I didn't do it because the impulse wasn't strong enough. But music was in you, and you do have this wonderful gift of marrying the notes to the words. Did that start early?
Yeah, that started quite early.
The first Victoria Wood song was...
I was about 12 when I first. And I wrote a song, and my sister said, "Why on earth did you write funny words?" But I didn't write serious words.
Early on, I thought there was this urge, not precisely to break out, but to explore thematic. In other words, you're seeing the characters under... Your trolley ladies weren't just trolley dollies. They had stories. So drama was on your mind.
Well, it's just a different way of telling the same story. It's the same impulse to entertain, whether it's a 3-minute sketch or a 2-hour film or a musical or a song or a poem or whatever it is. It's the same. It comes from the same place in your heart, but you're just expressing it in a different way.
What was that thing you and Julie did where I think you're the responsible one and she's the irresponsible one, which is frequently true in your work. You've got this sense of responsibility.
Well, I was usually the plain one. She was the pretty one. I'd be the plain one, and the plain one always takes on that sort of dog's body role because they feel they have to earn their position.
Yeah, you think it goes? Well, I think it goes deeper than that. There's an actual sense of morality. The appalling thing about the irresponsible person is that they know what they're supposed to do, but they don't have to do it.
Yeah, they get away with it. Yeah,
it's a kind of
That
dreadful...
was Talent. That play was called Talent.
Yes,
about 2 girls going for a talent competition.
Yeah, it was fabulous. So there's that dreadful freedom as you looked on appalled because she's been really very good at it.
Yeah.
And but I would put that on if I was putting milestones on your road, I would say that was a milestone. And then there was this amazing thing you did about a housewife.
Housewife 49. Yeah.
She was real, wasn't she?
She was real. Yeah, I took a lot of dramatic license, but it was based on a real diary from the Second World War.
Yeah, wasn't the diary kept from mass observation or something?
Yeah.
Now, we have to explain to the viewers far-flung
yes.
that Britain at one stage was studying itself
yes.
as if its own working-class population was actually an anthill.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Which is roughly, as if there was some sort of alien species.
Poor people of Bolton had to be looked at and examined.
It was sociological study.
Yeah, they asked people to send in accounts of their own lives.
Yeah, and one of these popped up, and it was Nella
Last, she was
Nella
called.
Last.
Yeah.
And her story was...
She was just an ordinary housewife who'd had a nervous breakdown. One son was about to go to war. She had a difficult relationship with her husband, and she's liberated by being able to go out and work for the war, work for the WVS.
It's an epic. Could you have done it as a stage play?
I don't think it would have been as interesting. I always saw it as a film.
You actually like film and television?
I do like film. I do. Yeah.
You don't see that as a dilution of any writer's impulse
No,
for use
I
in
don't.
expansion.
No, but I think what you have to do is be careful to match the idea to the medium, and just make sure you're in the right place with whatever it is you've thought of. Yeah. Some things can be done on the stage.
She's terrific, and a lot of there aren't that many gags in that one.
No, it's quite a straight story. I had to stick to the basic facts of her life as well.
And a lot of it is, the emotions are by implication, or they take them in your face. And I hate saying this when a director is around. There's a director here somewhere. He's lurking around there, looking into his monitor, But it's very well directed. That
it is very well directed, yeah. Beautiful.
And how much of that have you designed on the page? Are you saying, well, the camera looks at her?
No, I didn't need to do that because Gavin Miller is such a good director.
You know where you are with
he knows what the scene's about and directs it accordingly. So
sometimes in comedy, of course, you're fighting the director.
What do you have to say? Go on mine, go on him. Go on mine.
That brings you to Antiques. The show is not called. The whole show is called As Seen on TV, right?
Yeah.
But in the middle of it, there's this thing which raises all kinds of epistemological issues. A word I haven't said since university. Do you have to have seen Crossroads in order to appreciate?
I think not. Well, now you have to explain what Crossroads is to people.
Let's tell about there at Ecuador and Bolivia. Bolivia, where they have they've got crossroads in the South American countries, but they call them telenovelas.
Right.
They're soap operas,
right,
and they're done the way Crossroads is. In fact, they're even cruder because the dialogue is written on the set and comes in through the earpiece. And they say what they hear. And Crossroads wasn't quite that bad.
No, it wasn't.
I met the Queen of Crossroads, Noel Gordon. Now, here we have to get into explanation mode.
Yes.
Noel Gordon was the Queen.
The star of Crossroads, a daily soap opera set in a motel in Birmingham.
And she was a hugely important star because she was at the centre of this thing,
Yes.
Crossroads.
Yes, it's rather wonky. That was the first soap that went 4 days a week. They didn't always, and they weren't allowed to stop because they didn't have any editing time, so they were encouraged to carry on no matter what.
Lovely stated. So the phone didn't ring.
Yeah. And there were lots of people who weren't allowed to speak, so the people who were handing their keys back over the desk used to just do that. And they'd say, "Oh, you're handing your key, and thank you very much." And they would go like that and go off because it would be more expensive if they said anything.
And if the phone
And it was you who spotted that whenever they were mending a car in the garage, it was always the same car.
Yes, that's facing the other way, yes. I think I was also watching the time when somebody said that phone isn't ringing. But I loved it. But you're obviously a keen student of it.
I just used to watch telly, and that was one of the things that was on. I just loved it.
Anyway, you had the inspired idea of it in your show, and the problem was to make it look like the original. That must have taken a lot of writing because you had to tell them how to be bad.
Yes, and you had to stop them from being too bad and try and root it in some sort of reality that people are trying to do properly. People never try to do things badly; they only happen by accident.
When Julie would come on and
she'd be waiting for her cue. You could see her in the back waiting for her cue, and then you could see her take her cue and come on, or she'd come on early and have to be sent off and then come back again.
And then look for the camera, slightly, not disturbed, but accusingly.
Yes, it's always somebody else's fault.
There's a triangular relationship in the middle of, I won't say all your work, but a great deal of your television work. And it goes like this. This is my mass observation. This is my written, right? There's Julie. There's Celia Ivry. And Celia is upper crust or would be upper crust, which is always more interesting in Britain.
Yes.
Aping the aristos is much more interesting than being an aristo. The aristos, in fact, are probably spending most of the time shoving needles in their arms or something. It's the people
watching telly,
watching telly, Anyway, Celia aspires.
Yes.
And Julie is the thing that Celia doesn't want to be.
Yes.
At any cost, she must not be that.
Yeah.
Julie is the working class nightmare. And somewhere in the middle is you, the decent one.
Yes.
That's the way it works out. That's a pretty fair analysis.
I think that's very good,
Yeah, and it's the motor for an awful lot of interesting work because it shows you what's going on in Britain. Maybe it's going on in all societies, but I'm not so sure the Americans are like that. Would your stuff work in America?
I wouldn't think so. I wouldn't think they'd get it.
I was watching Eddie Murphy the other night on cable channel 749. I'm a big admirer of Eddie Murphy, even though he's wearing a purple velvet suit with sequins and stacked heels, and I don't usually like that kind of man. And he was saying, well, we can say it because in this little channel we say fuck. He was saying fuck every 2 seconds like that. Fuck. And eventually the word wore out, and it meant nothing.
Yeah.
And I think it's a waste of time. And, of course, one thing you can guarantee is you can't use the word for shock effect if you use it all the time.
No, and you can't use it for comedic effect after the first three.
No.
So.
I saw Amy Winehouse the other night on the next channel to Eddie Murphy, channel number 786, and she's a great singer. She's got this voice. It's like Joplin and Billie Holiday both singing at once. But in between numbers, she's doing a full staggering around, strung out thing, as if the bad life were the good life. And I think, maybe I'm just old-fashioned. I thought, what's happening to women? Should women be on this road? Do you have views?
I do, because I feel it's taking away from from what you do in private and what you say in private. It's like there's no difference. And I think we all need to be able to say fuck and whatever we want to say when we're sitting here like this. And I feel that what we say in public should be more structured, should be more thought out, should be cleverer, should be a heightened version of who, I'm talking about comedy now, be a heightened version of who you are in private. And if I don't see billboards that say, you know, FC UK.
I don't like that either. How do you explain it to kids?
I find it deadening and tiring. And I feel I'm being bombarded. And I think, I love all those words. I don't want to see them written up everywhere and used in common parlance, because then we got no special words. We got nothing special to say when we drop a brick on our toe.
Well, what do we call ourselves? You can't call yourself fuddy-duddies. You can't call yourself conservatives. You're not a conservative.
I'm not a conservative, but I think in the end you have to, as you get older, you take stands about things. You're not prepared. You're not prepared to go along with what seems a popular view. I don't mind just sounding old-fashioned. I don't want to see fuck written up on a billboard. That's all. I want to be able to say it in my own house and have it mean something.
Yeah.
That sounds so doesn't it?
No, I'm right. No, I'm right. No, I'm right with it. I'm right with it. I'm just wondering, but you can't. It's very, very hard to package. It's a very subtle attitude.
Well, it's so much easier for a bad copywriter or a bad comedy writer to use fuck, bollocks, wank than it is to actually think of a clever way of shaping a sentence so it gets a laugh.
It does take away some of the language's beauty, and also it does something else that we're actually quite scared to mention, which is to coarsen the sensibilities of the listener. This is a big, big question to ask, but are you satisfied with the British population nowadays? especially its younger versions?
Well, I think you're right. I think coarsening is a very good word, and people get deadened. We're deadened by what we see and hear. We see and hear too much all the time. If you can see people having sex on television, on any channel, at any time, at any age, I don't believe that's a good way to bring your society up.
Or in any train.
Yes, yeah.
Another reason for not travelling on public transport.
Or if you can go into it, I mean, I just think everything just feel bombarded. I don't want to go into a shop and hear some really terrible DJ on a local radio station, and I feel like assaulted by sound, really.
The concept of silence has gone, and I don't know what to do. And I keep reading stories about people who tried to ask some kid to turn down the radio in the train and they got knifed or something.
Killed, yeah.
So what do you do? Do you speak your mind?
I never would know. I'm too feeble to do that.
Well,
I try and avoid being in that situation. But it's very difficult to avoid noise now. I think that's the worst pollution that we have.
Yeah.
It's noise.
Speaking of pollution, do you recycle?
Of course I do, yeah.
What do you recycle? You have 4 different kinds of...
Bottles, batteries, cardboard, paper. I've got a compost heap. I save my milk bottle tops. I take them to the dump and recycle them there. I take my clothes to the Oxfam. I do everything I can in that way. I tear out the plastic bit of the envelope, put it in the recycling.
My stomach is rumbling just to listen to this. It's fear.
I just bought one of those things you siphon your bathwater out with, but it's too short, so it just made the wall wet. So I need to get an extension.
What kind of thing is it? What does it do?
It siphons out your bathwater out of your bathroom window, and you can into a water butt or something in your garden.
It saves the water, in other words.
Yes, you can use the water in your garden then.
I hope it's helping. Are you convinced that it is?
Oh, I think it wouldn't do any harm for us to live moderately. I think that would be good for everybody.
I agree with that. It's exemplary what you're doing to save the planet's resources, and it brings me to the question of global warming. What happens when the oceans rise? Are you ready?
No, I'm not ready. I feel very pessimistic about it.
You don't like me joking about it, in fact, do you? Because you don't think it's a joke.
No, I find it really upsetting.
You sure it's true?
Yes, I'm sure it's true. Because everywhere I've been lately, people have said, oh, you know, that there used to be a river there, or there used to be, what are those things? Glaciers.
Yes.
You know, I've been to 2 places where the glaciers have really, really shrunk back. And so that's very visible evidence of something, surely. We've done so many things. We've used up so many resources because we haven't lived with any eye to the future. And I can't see that people will change. People will probably get very gung-ho and just say, well, there's nothing we can do. We might as well carry on living as we are.
I've got a pretty low carbon footprint. I may not look it, but I don't drive a car. I occasionally am driven.
But you fly.
Yes. I go to Australia 4 or 5 times this year, and I'll be burning up the atmosphere each time. I can't think of a way around that one. Al Gore does that.
I know, well, it's hard. So, you know, you're saving a few egg cartons and taking them to the cardboard recycling, and then, you know, I've just flown around the world. I'm not in any position to criticise anybody. I've got a big house, I've got central heating, I've got a car, I've had 2 children. I've done all the wrong things.
So what about this big project that's coming up I've been reading about?
Victoria's Empire. It's a 3-part travelogue.
Was that one of yours? Did you say, wouldn't it be a good idea if I saw the old
No, absolutely not. Somebody came to me and said,
Excuse me for a minute. I'm just going to lean forward here casually in a perfectly spontaneous way.
Somebody said, wouldn't it be a good idea if you went to lots of places called Victoria? Because there are places all over the world called Victoria. And I said, yeah, that's just a holiday. That's not actually a programme.
What about Woods? Bretton Woods?
Victoria Wood you could have gone to.
Bretton Wood, yes.
And then it turned into, well, why are there so many places called Victoria? Because we had so many places in the empire, we could call them whatever we wanted, and lots of places were called after her. So then it became travelogue. I went round, went to Ghana, Jamaica, Newfoundland. Every place I went to was called Victoria, or was near a place called Victoria, and it was just looking at different bits of the empire, how we came to get such a massive empire, because we had the biggest empire that anybody's ever had at its height.
Some would say the best one. It produced all kinds of interesting things. It produced metal suspension bridges, and me, for example. And I'm one of the many people who wouldn't be here or wouldn't be the way I am with empires. I'd be a damn fool to condemn the whole thing, wouldn't I?
Yeah, but there's probably lots of Aborigines probably wouldn't be quite so cheery about the whole thing.
Well, yeah, that's a big question, which we should go into when we have Aboriginal viewers, right?
Right.
And the question is not quite as simple as it
I know,
appears.
but the thing is, the minute you go to any country, nothing is simple,
Turns
and
out,
you
yeah.
cannot not that I ever attempted to. It was all too big and too unmanageable and too subjective.
So is that the theme? You go in expecting something, and then it turns
But
out...
what I wanted to do was to go in and say, as a child of the 50s, I was taught that England was the top country, that English was the top language, white was the top colour, everybody else was a native, and their main purpose was to bring us pineapples and cocoa. And that was very good, and it was sort of a bit like scouting in my mind. You know, that we were one little pink country, and we had lots of other pink countries, and we sort of looked after them, and we could go there whenever we wanted, and they couldn't come here. That seemed to be the arrangement.
Scouting for boys, as it was unfortunately called when I was a kid. And they did too.
Yes, they did.
Yeah, you were taught all that, and so I
wanted to sort of bring that into the programme, but it is just a travelogue. There isn't any of that in it.
I doubt very much anything you do is just something. It'll have that extra implication. What sort of control did you have over deciding what went into it?
Well, I couldn't plan any of it because, you know, logistically it was very complicated because I could only go away 14 days at a time. Yeah. So I had to leave it to other people to plan the actual flights and where we went and who we met. Yeah. I had a lot of control over when we got back, what we did with the footage, but I had no control over which old codger I might be expected to interview at any point.
Yeah. I don't suppose you're allowed to mention any of the famous old codgers, but what happened in Africa, for example? We went to the African colonies.
Yeah, we went to Ghana, which is where the main slave trade was carried out. We went to Slave River. We went to one of the forts on the west coast where the slaves were kept in the dungeons underneath the chapel, and where they sailed, where they were put in the boats and put over onto Jamaica. Then we went to Jamaica.
And nothing complicated about that. It turns out to be unbelievably hideous beyond hideous.
Yes, that was the only one where you could say that is bad. Full stop. Yeah. But then when we got to Jamaica, we met the slaves, the people who are descended from the freed slaves who live in the rainforests of Jamaica, who've all got Scottish and English names because they used to belong to Scottish and English people. And so some of it was really uplifting and some of it not.
Well, I think there's no limit to what you can do. So it's a thrill to hear that there might be a limit to your ambition here and there. It's been a pleasure. We'll do this again. Thank you very much, Victoria Wood.
Thank you.